Okay, good. I guess we'll get started then. Can you all see the slides?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. I can't see everyone else though. Oh well. Well, welcome to our National Coming Out Day panel. Thank you so much for joining us. We're all excited to have you here. And let's start by meeting our panelists. Devin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Devin, and I'm currently living in Southern California. I'm a retired educator, 41 years in public education, and just glad that I'm not in Florida right now with this hurricane, and the pattern that you guys have been having this year has just been terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely been a rough year so far.
Yeah.
Kevin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name's Kevin Jura. I am currently residing in New Orleans. After working for 20 plus years, I don't know why, I keep questioning my sanity, decided to go back and get a doctorate. So I'm at Tulane getting a doctorate in public health.
Thank you. Leland?
Hi, I'm Lee Blair. I am Associate Professor of Acting and Musical Theater at West Virginia University in Morgantown, West Virginia.
Ooh.
To give you a little geographic perspective, I'm an hour and 15 south of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We're right on the border with Pennsylvania. And that's me.
Awesome, thank you. And last but not least, Ronnie.
Hi there, everybody. I'm Ronnie Sanlow, and I graduated from Florida in 1969, so I'm part of the gay old guard. And I am retired. I was the LGBT Center Director at the University of Michigan, as well as UCLA, from which I retired. And prior to going into higher ed, I was the HIV epidemiologist for the state of Florida from 87 to 94, basically.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Now, starting off with our questions, we're going to start off with some already written questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience. So to all our panelists, if you'd like to share when and how you first came out, and then how is being out now different than when you first came out? I can't actually see everyone and have the presentation up, unfortunately, on my computer. So
I'll
whoever
start.
would go ahead.
So I came out twice. And the reason I say that is I came out to my close friends in my early 20s. I came out to my family about 4 years ago. Now, the reason for that is I grew up in deep South, in Panhandle of Florida, in a conservative Mormon family where that just wasn't going to fly. So, I knew early on, but with my closest friends, they knew. I came out to them in my early 20s. And it wasn't until about 4 years ago I finally said, screw it, I'm tired of hiding. And I let my entire family know. One of them, my brother is like, I disagree with your lifestyle choice, but I love you nonetheless. My father is old school Albanian. He immigrated here as a child, and I had to tell him twice. He still doesn't acknowledge it, but he hasn't broken off. I don't think he wants to acknowledge it, but at this point, I really don't care one way or the other. And as far as how it's different now, when I first came out in my early 20s versus now is night and day. I don't even know how to describe it, because now there's no cultural stigma. There's no, yeah, we're always going to have issues. There's always going to be haters, but now it's widely accepted and embraced, where back then, in the late 90s, early aughts, it was coming around, but it wasn't there yet. So yeah, for me, night and day.
Thank you. Who would like to go next?
When this opportunity came about, it was very unique in a way because I think being at UF helped facilitate me coming out. I had been accepted to the graduate acting program at the University of Florida, and I was leaving Tennessee and putting an entire state in between me and family. And I was also a little bit older, I thought at the time. I was 28. And so as I drove from Nashville to Gainesville to start my studies in acting, I made the conscious decision that I would be totally open and out when I got to Gainesville and when I got to UF. And that's pretty much what happened. And so I think the opportunity to, first off, continue and grow in my studies as an actor. My decision to go to UF for grad school and their acceptance of me was the best decision in my entire life. It just changed everything. And on top of that, the ability to feel open enough and confident enough and supported enough to be fully out from pretty much day one was monumental. It was. And so to be in a group of people, I studied theater in undergraduate, and there were many gay and lesbian students, but it was Tennessee. I did have family close by. My father's a minister, a Methodist minister, and I just wasn't in the place to step out, even with close friends at the time that were out. It took a little while, and so Florida helped precipitate that, and it was a really welcoming moment.
I'll go. I was at the University of Florida for my undergrad work from 1973 to 1977 and studied elementary education in the College of Education there. And as you can imagine, at that time, I was not out. There was no way that I was going to be coming out, and pretty much was very closeted and very afraid to be discovered. I was studying education and was very afraid about the ability to get a job in Florida as an elementary school teacher, and being identified as a queer person really did not feel safe to me at all. The very first time I really came out to anyone, I actually met someone in Arcadia, Florida. For those of you that are familiar with Florida, that's a very small town. And we kind of discovered that we might have some common interests because we were talking about the Indigo Girls and other bands and music at the time. And we both kind of came out to each other right around that time and essentially started a relationship that ended really rather suddenly. My mother had become very, very ill and innocently said that she was very sad that she would never see me marry. And I had a boyfriend at the time and was living this life very closeted, and decided that I would give her that gift before she left, and got married, had children. And when she passed away, it was literally 30 seconds that my brain said, I'm finally free. And then it was a journey from there. And I've been coming out all my life since then. I knew as a very young child. My dad was in the military, so I was very afraid of that whole aspect of being discovered. There were plenty of military women around me that I felt like I could identify with, but never dared to have those conversations as a young child or kid. And over the course of many years, I've really come fully to terms with the fact that I really am probably I am a non-binary transmasculine person. And so my coming out has been a progression of peeling back the onion of who I really am after a lot of being long time in the closet. How it is different today, Well, it was different and it was better and it was getting a lot better. And then, as I'm sure you can imagine, the political climate right now for me is not safe. I had retired from Los Angeles School District and moved to Florida. I went back to Florida, bought my retirement home, wanted to be there. I was in Fort Lauderdale, just outside of Wilton Manors, and loved it. I loved every minute of it. And ultimately, the hatred being driven towards the queer community and the trans community and the laws that were starting to come into play in Florida really started to make me frightened. I had a partner who lives in California and we were doing the long distance thing. And I was actually here in California when I received a message from my doctor in Wilton Manors that said he would no longer treat me for my hormone replacement therapy because of the state and the new laws. And right then and there, I just felt like my life was going to end. I was devastated. I could not believe that a state government could control my medical well-being. And I made an appointment at the DMV, got my California driver's license. I hung on to the house for a while. I really had hoped that things would get better and had planned to return, put the house on Airbnb. But right now, the landscape there for me, the bathroom law about being arrested if I'm in the wrong bathroom, the last time I was there to my home, I really felt like I could not leave my house. I did not feel safe to leave the house. So that's how it is for me now.
Wow. Well, thank you all for sharing your stories. And Deb, you and I are good friends, and every time I hear your story, my heart just goes out to you, and it just stabs me.
Well, thank you.
Sure. I knew I was different when I was 11 and fell in love with Annette Funicello, the best Mouseketeer ever. But I couldn't tell anybody, and I didn't. I didn't want to be different from my family. Got to the University of Florida in 1965, and that was the year after the Johns Committee, lesbian and gay witch hunts at the university, was disbanded. And when I got there, of course, we all heard the stories. Everybody heard the stories of this horrible stuff that happened. And that kept me in the closet for another 15 years. So I just stayed closeted. I ended up marrying a guy from University of Florida. And we had 2 kids. And when my children were 3 and 6, was right around the time Anita Bryant was doing her horrible anti-gay stuff in Florida. And I just couldn't stay in the closet any longer. I thought if I can't live my truth, I'm going to die. And not knowing any of the repercussions, not knowing any of the laws, not knowing anything, including not knowing any other lesbians, or I did know a couple gay men. But I came out finally in 1979, and I lost custody of my children in Florida. We were living near Orlando at the time. And I just became this raving wild activist. And about a year and a half after I came out, I became the executive director and lobbyist of the Florida Lesbian and Gay Civil Rights Task Force, which you probably have never heard of. It finally disbanded in 1990, I believe. And really, it was kind of a forerunner of Equality Florida, but did some amazing work with that organization. But so I came out like gangbusters. Once I came out and lost my kids, I just thought, there's nothing anybody else can do to me. Kill me? Big deal. I lost my kids. So I was just praised. I used to be called, we were called militant homosexuals. I was a militant homosexual. And because I was just out and about in Florida constantly, I finally quit the Florida Task Force because they had no money to pay me. And I just went from job to job, piddly jobs, until I finally ran out of jobs and I had no place to live for a little while. But I got hired by the health department in Florida in '87. They had this position working in the AIDS program as an HIV epidemiologist, and nobody would apply for the job. And the feds told the state that if they didn't put someone in that position quickly, they were going to lose their AIDS money. And I needed a job. And so I got hired. I couldn't even pronounce epidemiology at the time. But they sent me to the CDC in Atlanta. I learned how to do the work. And I did the work for 7 years. And it was some of the most amazing, some of the saddest, some of the most profound time in my life. But that job also paid for a master's degree. From Florida, I graduated with a bachelor's of music from Florida in '69. So this job paid for my master's in education and counseling, and then a doctorate in educational leadership and organizational development, both from the University of North Florida. And I was hired in 1994 by the University of Michigan to develop and grow their LGBT office. And it was one of the 5 of such offices in the country at the time. And they were going to pay me to do things I used to get fired for doing in Florida, which I thought was really pretty cool. And about 3.5 years later, I was recruited by UCLA, became a professor in the Graduate School of Education there, and directed the LGBT Center there, and was a faculty in residence until I retired about 10 years ago. I loved all of the work that I did. I was always open, and never regretted it, even though sometimes there weren't wonderful things that happened about it. But really, truly, the wonderful part was I lived my life authentically. And a lot of women didn't want to date me because they were more closeted and would be considered guilty by association. There were no laws in our favor when I came out. I mean, the laws were terrible. And if there were any laws at all, they were always anti-LGBT for sure. And so the difference now from then is now I'm legally married to my wife, which is a huge difference. And I'm able to do a lot of the things that I've always wanted to do, to speak out in different ways. But what's really happening right now, and I think Leah alluded to this, and Deb as well, is that where it used to be somewhat safe for us, and we began, not my generation, but a couple generations after me, began the process of assimilation. It's no longer safe for us. And my wife and I have been really talking about to what country can we move if the election doesn't go the way we want it to go. So that's, and I've never thought about that before, even in some of the worst times in the past. And I have a daughter and a son. My son and his wife are pansexual. My daughter's heterosexual. Her 2 children, one's a lesbian and the other is non-binary, bisexual. And my daughter's dating a guy who has a transgender son. So, nobody in my family is safe. And and they're all in Florida, by the way. So they're especially not safe. So that's how life today is. I really hadn't thought that much about the whole concept of safety as I was coming out and doing a lot of the things I was doing. And today, I am very concerned about safety, and I feel more fear than I felt when I was younger and had come out. So that, for me, that's the biggest difference.
Thank you all for sharing. Those were honestly all amazing to hear.
Can anyone speak and tell their story, or is only certain panelists?
right now for the panelists, we will have some questions later open for the
Okay.
audience.
All right.
So moving on to the next set of questions. These will be more personalized to the individual panelists. To Devin, you mentioned in your biography that you were starting your career during the Save the Children campaign. And how did that really affect you?
Yeah, so during the time when I started my career in 1977, I was very aware of Anita Bryant. Granted, she was in Dade County. I was in DeSoto County. At the time, DeSoto County had one high school for the county, one middle school, and then two elementary schools that were split. So one of the elementary schools was K2 and the other one was 3 to 5. And when I started applying for my certificate or credential to teach in Florida, there was actually a question on the credential application that asked if you were a homosexual. So right off the bat, you have to lie, because you're not going to get hired in the state of Florida. Anita Bryant, of course, was campaigning heavily to make it so that teachers could not work at all with children. So here I am graduating from college, happy to have finished, starting my career. And I'm thinking I could end up not having a career because of this woman and what she is doing. And of course, I was not out. I was very afraid to come out. And so I felt like I need to protect myself and stay in the closet and lie. And so the buildup of lies that I think we all tell ourselves for many years in our journey of growing up and maturing and coming into an understanding of who we are, especially back then when there was no representation. You didn't see anybody on TV. You just didn't hear about it. I felt like I saw people, especially in the military, when I was still living on the military base, I saw plenty of military women that in my mind said, oh, I understand who you are. I know why you don't have a husband, right? But we didn't even have words back then. So the whole Save the Children campaign made me really feel like, one, like I didn't deserve to be a teacher, that I was actually dangerous to be around kids. And I couldn't understand why was this happening. I was a lifeguard for the Dade County Parks and Rec, their public school or public pool program, taught swimming lessons, never felt like I was dangerous around children. But somehow you hear this over and over and over again, and you start to really question, is there something about me that I don't know yet that's gonna come out, that's gonna happen? So it was tremendous. Of course, meeting Linda and us having this relationship in Arcadia. We eventually rented a house together. The guy who owned the house was one of the local ministers of a Baptist church. We had a 2-bedroom. I mean, we did everything stealth that we could come up with to protect who we were and how we interacted. And we both talked quite a bit, talked a lot about Anita Bryant, and just, I still to this day, I have such visceral reactions to her when I hear her name, when I hear anything come up about her, and then seeing some of those campaigns get resurfaced again now or a few years back here in California. People think here in California, it's all great. Well, the local school boards here in many areas of California are doing the exact same thing. They are putting in laws against the state ed code. They're putting in stuff that is happening here that people think it wouldn't happen here in California. And what I always remind people of is, don't kid yourself. Your vote is very important for your local school board, your local city councils, because they do have power and they can have huge influence on your local public schools and what is going to happen for kids in these schools. So for me, it affected me. It had long-term, long-standing consequences in my own life. as a teacher, and then ultimately coming out as a high school teacher here in Los Angeles, and then running the program at our high school called Project 10, which was designed for the idea that 10% of the population is gay. And this was a support group for kids that self-identified anywhere in the queer community. And just being able to do that, but still at the same time being afraid of parents making accusations that I'm convincing their kids to be in the club and do this. And it has had long-term, long-standing effects on me.
Thank you for sharing. Wow. Moving on to Kevin, you mentioned in your biography that that you lived both in the US and abroad in Europe. And I was wondering, have you noticed any cultural differences in being out here versus there or anywhere in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a wonderful question. I will put the caveat that it depends where in the US you are when you compare it to Europe. You know, when I lived in the Boston area, no one cared. You know, there was no issue. Pretty much the same in the greater DC area. Once you got into the suburbs, it turned really conservative. You know, versus, and here in New Orleans, well, I mean, it's one of the gay meccas, along with you know, Key West and the others, especially come decadence, you know, time. So yeah, right now there's no issues here in New Orleans. In Europe, for the most part, yeah, there was some where I live, you know, the far right sides were advocating against the nationalists. You have that, but you're going to have that everywhere. Europe, it was I felt very welcome, very open. No one cared. There was no stigma. You know, health providers, you know, there were you know, not billboards, but signage and other things for, you know, gay men to get on PrEP. Healthcare providers were trained about it and knew about it. And it was, okay, you're gay. So what? Who cares? Okay. We just, you know, healthcare providers, okay, we just have to consider this, this, and this, that we didn't have to worry about if you were heterosexual, you know, but otherwise no one cared. You know, there are tons of resources available that I found, a lot of it free, you know, with the European health system. You know, some you had to pay, you know, but, you know, plus the social life, you know, it wasn't, you didn't have to, you know, growing up in the Deep South, you were ashamed, you were closeted, you couldn't come out, at least in my experience. And, you know, I think it might have been Devin who said it, or someone said it about UF really helped them start to. And at UF is where I started to be more comfortable and grow and accept myself. And, you know, times have changed, like I said, different generation than the current, you know, undergraduate students. But yeah, for the most part, Europe, it's okay. So what? Who cares? It's not a big deal compared to the majority, you know, a good chunk of the US where it's still an issue. Now, we do have areas where, you know, like New York, Boston, you know, major metropolitan cities, it's not an issue. So I hope that answered the question.
Yes, thank you for your insight. Moving on to Lee, you're an actor, director, and professor, and I was wondering if your professional circles, have you noticed any differences?
There are times that I realize that I live in a very protected bubble at times, being in the arts and in a university setting for the most part, not always. In professional circles, no. I mean, again, it's sort of a bubble. It's a group of people that are, for the most part, very accepting overall. Like I said, and as Kevin alluded, I said that getting to UF was really a place where I felt showing up in Gainesville, I was going to be open. Like I said, in my undergrad, there were gay and lesbian students, but I wasn't out. It was too close to home. It was too close to other friends. And I'm sure many people feel this way when you're closeted and you feel like you've been lying to people You feel like you've been lying to your friends when you think about coming out, that they're going to be upset, or in family, a minister's family. So when I got to UF, it was very open, and I found just friends that were supportive, colleagues that were supportive, faculty that were supportive. And it wasn't just about, and in that instance, seeing me as an actor, but seeing me as a gay man, seeing me as the person I was completely. So then moving to New York, I moved to New York. So that was a world and a circle of people and professional connections where being gay and lesbian and transgendered or bisexual or is it's just the support and the acceptance overall is just there. But there, and I was thinking about this, there are still closeted people in the entertainment industry, many. They still struggle with the same issues. It doesn't matter that it's entertainment, that it's theater or film or television. Many people that start making bigger projects and booking bigger things go back into the closet because they're afraid of the repercussions from it, of ending their career. But I left New York and I moved to West Virginia. And I find of course, my colleagues that I teach with are fully supportive. My college is fully supportive. I'm living in a college town, which tends to be more liberal than the rest of West Virginia tends to be. There is a good gay and lesbian population in North Central West Virginia due to West Virginia University, and that's a great place to be. But I'm always didn't think twice about it, open and out with my students. There's no secret to that, and it is a professional relationship as their professor, as their acting teacher. So the differences are few, and I just, again, I feel like it's a safe place at times, and it's something I have to realize not to take for granted, because there are unsafe places. Kevin talked about growing up in the South. Yeah, it wasn't as accepting and easy, and it's still not. But things have slowly changed, I think, but it's still a difficult place. And so the locale has a great deal to do with the comfort level of being your true, authentic self. Yeah.
Thank you for expanding on that. Ronnie, I know you run a really wonderful podcast on queer history, so I wanted to ask you, why do you think it is important for younger generations to learn about how it was out at different points in time?
Oh, great question too. I was excited to see that. When I was a kid, and, I told you I knew I was different when I was 11, and I would search my school libraries, elementary school, junior high, high school, looking for something that told me I was okay and that I wasn't alone. And I found nothing. I mean, in 1962, I was in high school, and the Britannica came out with its first mention of homosexuality, and it said, homosexual, men who love other men, see lesbian. So I flipped over to lesbian, and it said, women from the Isle of Lesbos, see homosexual. And I thought, God, I mean, what does that have to do with anything? And it certainly didn't tell me who I was. So I was always looking for books of stories of strong women with whom I could identify. And there were so few that I could find. So when I got to UCLA finally, decades later, I was able to design the LGBT center there, and I designated a 400 square foot room as the LGBTQ library. And it eventually became part of the University of California library system. But I wanted a place where young people could go to find reflections of themselves, to know without a doubt that they're not alone. So that was a guiding piece for me. And once I retired, I had the time to write many of the things that I wanted to write, including a 4-volume set called This Day in LGBTQ History. And it has blurbs from every single day of the year for as much as I could find. And each volume is anywhere from 300 to 500 pages. So it's a lot of information about who we are and from where we came and on whose shoulders we stand. And I think it's important for us to understand from where we came if we have any clue about to where we're going. And I think that's especially important now, and especially important for young people for several reasons. Number one, in places like Florida, where books are banned, you can't find books about us anymore in school libraries or even in local libraries. My dissertation was called Unheard Voices, the Effects of Silence of Lesbian and Gay Teachers in Northeast Florida. My dissertation was approved and everybody signed off on it, but back then, the Board of Education would not want to be placed in the university library. And I was lucky enough to have published a couple of books. And so my publisher actually said, the heck with them, let's put it in Borders. And we published the book. And the book is now in the library at University of North Florida in the Ronnie Sanlow archives. So I did get it into the library. But I think it's very important for us, for young people today, to understand that the ways in which you're safe and able to live your lives happened because an awful lot of people gave their lives for you to be here and to be free. And now it's your turn to do that heavy lifting work in light of this political climate, so that those coming up behind you will be able to live their lives in freedom. So I think it's like an ongoing generational thing. And it's just simply important to know from where we came and to where we're going. Thanks. That was a good question.
Thank you. Back open to everybody. What would you tell somebody who is just starting their journey coming out?
It's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. And don't be afraid to be who you are. And there are people that care about you, love you, and will support you. And especially for those that think about suicide, please don't. Reach out, the Trevor Project or any other project, because you're not alone. You're not disgusting. You're not horrible. You're not any adjective that's been thrown at us over the years. There are people that care about you, that don't even know you, but care about you and want you to be happy. And it's a process. And if you're struggling, there is support. There are people there to support you. If you are fortunate to have a family and friends that don't bat an eye, that's wonderful. Wonderful. Just know it's a struggle. Struggle is not what I meant to say. It's a process. For some, it'll happen very quickly. For others, it may take a decade or two, or a year, or weeks, or months. But don't let anyone force you to come out before you're ready or speed you up. And I can't emphasize it enough. You're not alone. There are people there that care about you. And if you're struggling, reach out. There are plenty of resources to help you.
Thank you. Who would like to go next?
Yeah, you know what? I'd like to jump in on this. My career is in teaching in the high school level. and then going on to becoming a principal of 2 different high schools here in Los Angeles. As you can imagine, I had a lot of opportunity to interact with young people that were entering as 9th graders, maybe touching, I mean, today I think young people are much more aware of this topic and who they are much faster than anything I would have ever imagined. And even though I knew it in myself, I didn't have the words, I didn't have the community. But I think one of the things that, you know, in working with young people at all of the schools where I was, one of the things that would come out, we would talk about was, and Kevin, you talked about this a little bit, is what is the safety factor for where you are at this point in your life? And are you safe, you know, in those various different communities in which they interact? So, you know, we go through our day and we have many different kinds of people that we interact with, whether it's at school or our faith places or work or whatever. And so, you know, the kids, many of the students that I would be along this journey with in the beginning, many of them wanted to jump on this, you know, I want to come out, I want to be who I am, you know. But then when we kind of put the brakes on a little bit and said, okay, what's your safety net? You know, if things don't go the way you think they're going to go in your home, what's your plan? I've seen too many kids. I have a trans daughter that her mother, when she was working on it, trying to deal with it, Children's Hospital of Los Angeles was incredible. This woman, Bambi Salcido, I was so grateful to have her in my life for this child. And ultimately her mom marched her into court and said, I'm not doing this, and turned her over to the state right then and there. And so this was a young person who was really trying to either not kill herself or find resources that needed to be there for her to help pick this piece up, that she had a safe place to be. And, you know, ultimately, you know, she is my daughter. She's fine and safe and adult and living a great life. And, you know, and that's great. But a lot of the young people that I would interact with, they had no one, or at least they couldn't identify anyone. And so those conversations were hard to have with those young people, to say, I know it's hard. You can be here in school and be yourself, and we will embrace you and we will protect you, and I will do everything in my power as a teacher or a principal to keep you safe. But when you leave this space, you need to make sure that how you are interacting, you are safe. You know, there was a young man up in Oxnard, California, who was foster care, and he was being very greatly encouraged to be himself, stand up, be proud. And there was some guy in his school that he had a crush on, and he gave this young man a Valentine's Day card. And that kid came to school the next day and ended his life. Not the recipient of this child's admiration, but the child who had this crush on him. So when you're talking about young people, you know, I do take the lens of caution, because they will go out great. You know, they will often go out in great force, and I won't be there to protect them. Ronnie won't be there. Lee, Kevin, you know, who's going to make sure that they're okay? And who knows what goes on behind closed doors. So like Kevin said, there are so many resources. The internet, what a gift for young people, anyone nowadays. You can get on the internet and find all kinds of ways to connect with people, build your community in safety until that day comes that you really can, you know, find your way and be safe outside of the privacy of their own bedroom or whatever on the internet. I'm so grateful that there are so many resources on the internet that you can get counseling now on the internet. You can get therapy on a Zoom call. I mean, it's amazing to me. So, but again, look at, you know, who's your safety net and have it ready to go. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have little to add to that, because you, Deb, and Kevin You really nailed it. I guess the one thing I would say is look for your posse. Look for people who will love you just the way you are. And there are many of us in all age groups, from your own age, if you're a young person, all the way up to my generation. We're here for you. So, make sure that you find your people, and it may not be the people that you thought it would be.
Yeah, just one thing to say, to add on to what wonderful things everybody else has said, is your journey is yours. It's nobody else's. Your time frame, when you come out, when you feel ready and safe to do so, that's your journey. And don't worry that it's not like anyone else's, as fast or as slow or as vibrant, or it could be quiet. It's your journey and on your timeline, along with everything else that everyone has said.
Thank you. Now we're going to open it up, questions up to the audience, if I can figure out how to stop presenting. If anybody would like to use the raise their hand feature and from the audience and ask any questions. Or do we have any in the... Okay, Alan, go ahead.
Hi, how you all doing? Glad you could do this. I just wanted to say something real quick. I work at UF now still, so I've been working there for 28 years. And actually, Ronnie, I met you probably about 15 years ago, at least. I'm still on what used to be called, when you came and spoke to us, was the Concerns Committee. The
Right.
LGBT Concerns Committee. It's called the LGBTQ plus Presidential Advisory Committee now. So, but how do you all feel? There's a lot of things going on in state colleges in Florida, and one of the things is they're getting rid of all the DEI programs. I mean, we had a librarian that they had to get to go into something else. They've closed down the Multicultural Affairs Department, which is where all the LGBT stuff is. You go to their website, it all says it's all under construction. And a lot of that was having to do with our president, who just resigned. So I was just wondering, what are your views on that? I really feel sad about that at UF. UF was changed my life. And when I did a right turn when I was in my 30s and became a freshman at UF, and discovered how welcoming it was and everything, and went to the Pride Student Union and all that kind of stuff. So that pretty much opened up. But how do you feel about these changes that they're doing? It's one of the bad things about Florida right now, other than hurricanes.
You're right, Alan. It is one of the...
It's Greg, by the way.
I'm sorry, Greg.
Yeah.
It is one of the bad things about Florida. There are many bad things about Florida right now, and it's happening at all the universities in Florida, but also at universities in many other states as well. Florida was the first, and Florida's the loudest, but it's happening at institutions all around the country. And, with the whole book banning and deleting DEI programs, all of those things, I mean, we've seen that before. We've seen it before in a place called Germany. Yep. And that's part of what is igniting the fear is, are we going to allow it to continue? Are we going to sit still and watch it happen? Or are we going to speak out? Are we going to do something? Are we going to say something? Even though it's really scary to do that, it's also really important that we make our voices known. And so one of the things that I'm really proud of, to be honest, is that the University of North Florida at least still has archives for different, like my archives are there. So I know that at least in one part of the library, there's a lot of LGBT stuff. But it's just my one little spot in the archives that probably nobody could ever find, but it's there.
Yeah,
And I think-
I was just going to say, University of Florida has a lot now. And I used to host gay movie night at the Pride Community Center here in Gainesville.
Right.
And I donated 400 LGBTQ DVDs to the University of Florida, and they put them right in the library. So
Yeah.
so the libraries are trying to remain as open as they can, but administration, now that we have our interim president, it doesn't feel like they're trying to run things out. We were lucky. We were scared at first that our committee was going to just be disbanded too, but it wasn't. So
Yeah. Well, hang in there. Thank you for being there.
yeah.
As someone who teaches at a university in a very rural and conservative state, that is not as loud always as Florida is. Things happen in Florida in a university system, or like the DEI and the books banning. And to be honest, those of us in West Virginia go, "Oh, great. Here, 3 years from now, we'll have to deal with this," because it just is a slower process to get to West Virginia. But it is something we have discussed as a unit, as a school, that the ending of DEI policies is down the road for
Yeah.
West Virginia. It's just a slower process because we are an extremely rural state. But West Virginia University is the flagship university. It's a large university here in Morgantown. And so it's just a slower process, which sometimes saves us and sometimes doesn't at West Virginia. It shouldn't be remarkable to us. You kind of have to remind yourself, as Ronnie said, "Oh, we've been through this before." The fear and ignorance that it rears its head over and over and over again in so many ways. And this is that. It is just fear. And so with a extremely conservative and Republican legislature at West Virginia, the DEI will happen it'll take a few years, just as open carry on campus just happened for us. It's going to happen, especially in all conservative states and conservative university systems. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Greg, to just kind of touch on it I'm not at the I'm retired now, but I never worked. I taught in a university for people that were getting their school psychology credentials. But, when I think about if this was happening in California at my school, where I was the principal last when I retired, and I was thrown into this idea that I have to go through and purge my school library of materials that were put in there for students. I don't know. I probably would have retired. I probably would have said, you know what? I cannot in good conscience do this. We have students who come into the library and look for materials or just happenstance, pick a book up off of the shelf that they didn't even think they were looking for, but the cover caught their attention. And not necessarily that it's a book about them, but maybe it's a book about their aunt or their uncle, meaning the topic. And now they're going to be able to, learn more. I just can't even imagine it. My office in both of my schools where I was principal and also as a high school teacher in my library in my classroom, I had all kinds of materials. I had all kinds of books and reading materials. And still to this day, I still send books to the school library where I retired from to the librarian to make sure, because public funds are tight, and trust me, as a principal, the library might get 2 books a year out of my budget when I was working. And so now that I'm retired, I try to find books that are on all kinds of topics, and I send them. And I just, DEI, I can't even imagine. You know, we have an internment camp here from the Japanese internment programs, and I've driven by this so many times. It's a state historical place now here in California, and I've stopped in, and I'll go into their little gift shop and buy books and videos or whatever, and I'll park them in the school library, because I don't know how our kids find out about this. How do they see this? I just can't even, like Ronnie, somebody said, right? We've done this before. We've been down this road before. I've had to worry about what book might be on a shelf in my office or in my classroom as a teacher. And it's exhausting. But again, it is on us. It does fall on us to do this. And I think about young people, Ariel, I mean, I don't know how old you are, but I'm sure that's really not in your lifetime. Did you really, really think that you could be facing the kinds of legislation and laws that are starting to come across, whether you're in Florida, wherever, they're happening? And I can't imagine being a young person having a taste of, you're welcome here, you can get married here, all these things are here for you. And now you are at the age where you're starting to look at this, go, well, wait a minute, I never had to go and protest about this before. Like really? We're going to do this now? It's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah. The thought of banning books just makes me sick. Like I said, I've been working in the library for 28 years, and that was my favorite place back in the 70s in high school, you know? And just the thought of that, I have thousands of books of my own. Probably way too many, but yeah.
Yeah, I can't, you know, here in California, I read a lot of books, and I'm doing a lot of reading, and I turn them into the Prison Project here so that they eventually make their way to other people that right now are incarcerated and don't have access. I wish I had a big library, but I'd rather gift them out to other people that don't have access. But yeah, I mean, I think all of us survived on what we could get out of the Encyclopedia Britannica. I know what you're talking about, Ronnie. In fact, I just heard that segment yesterday at the gym. Yeah.
Do we have any more questions from the audience? It's looking like that's a no. We do have some things to plug before we close off for the night. I know Gordon had something he wanted to mention.
First, I want to thank our our panelists for taking their time and sharing their stories with us tonight. The National Coming Out Day virtual panel has been one of the events that we have hosted every year since we restarted the LGBTQ+ Alumni Association at UF 4 years ago. And every year, these stories inspire me. And each year we have focused on a different theme, a different generation, a different viewpoint with their coming out stories. And I just want to thank you all for sharing with us and for, you know, just living your truth. And I think what inspiration I took from this was the idea of charting a path for the next generation and thinking about what we can do to support the young people who are coming up behind us. And I think I speak on behalf of everybody that's on the board with me, is that's why we do this work. You know, running this organization with everything that's gone on in Florida the last couple of years has been an interesting experience, to say the least. But when we get thank you notes from students for hosting events like this, when we get messages from alumni who are like, oh my God, I didn't know you existed, and it just gives me hope that you do, that you're still here. That's why we continue to do this work. That being said, I would like to make a quick plug because our scholarship application for the spring semester has just gone live. So I'm going to drop a link to our donation page from the UF Alumni Association. If anybody on the call tonight is inspired or would like to help pay it forward for the young people who are still students at UF, whose experience over the last 4 years has changed dramatically. I don't know if our alumni know this yet, but the Rainbow Room on campus is no longer in existence in the way that it was just a year ago. The Office for LGBTQ plus affairs is no longer there. And we, as the Alumni Association, have been working with our student organization partners to try and keep those services going. And the only way we can do that is through the support of our alumni network, and through people like all of you who care enough about the UF community to come to an event like this to hear our proud Gator stories. So if anybody is so inspired, we would appreciate any help we can get so that we can continue offering the scholarship program to students. The application date closes at the end of this month, and then we'll be announcing our winners probably the end of November. And let me tell you, every student applicant that we get for our scholarship program is incredible. When we look at their transcripts and their resumes, it puts mine to shame when I was at that point in college. It's a very impressive group of LGBTQ plus students that we have at UF right now.
Gordon,
yeah.
Gordon, I didn't know is the library there closed now? The Tamara Cohen Library.
I cannot speak from seeing it myself, but I know
I'm the library's liaison. That's an affiliate library of the UF libraries. All their stuff is in our catalog, and I've been trying to get in touch with people for trying to find out who's in charge of it now, and I haven't had any luck recently. We do have a new librarian for women's studies, and she was gonna go over there and check on it. So,
yeah, I know the Rainbow Room as a space is no longer in operation. I know Jameer Wright is no longer the director of the LGBTQ student experience.
Their websites are shut down.
Yeah. Which, when I was a student at UF, those spaces did not exist. I think they finally hired their first LGBTQ affairs director when I was a senior at UF, but we didn't have a community space to go to. And I just can't imagine what kind of traumatic experience it must be for students to have lost that.
The Rainbow Room was first in the building right next to Library East.
It was in Peabody Hall.
Yeah. Because I trained the people that were running the room on how to use the catalog. How to put their books in the catalog.
Yeah, so we are currently working with student organizations to see how we can step in to provide some of the supports that the Rainbow Room used to offer. We have created the Pathways to Pride mentorship program, which if anybody on the call is interested in serving as a mentor, we had Lisa logged off, but I believe we had 28 new students sign up to be mentees this year. So we are in need of some mentors. Devin, I might reach out to you separately because I have somebody on the West Coast who is interested in education, and they would probably love to speak to someone in their time zone. But if anybody is interested in serving as a mentor, please let us know. Ronnie, we are also working with PSU to bring Lavender Graduation back to UF because that was an event that was run out of LGBTQ affairs. So we've got some work ahead of us over the next few months, but we're trying to keep that our history and our tradition going at UF.
Hey, Gordon, on the committee I'm on, I maintain their web page too, and I can put events on there. If you want to send me information on things you would want on our website, I have community resources, campus resources, and all that, and a lot of other things, national. And we can put stuff on our website if you want.
Gordon,
awesome. Thank you, Gregory. I'll be in touch.
All right.
What are some other what other things well, I just did a huge letter writing campaign about an issue that was happening at my high school where I retired from, but what is your sense of this whole thing with the DEI stuff and the closing of the libraries and are there people and places that letter writing, phone calls that you feel may have an impact, or
So, my sense, and this is me speaking as Gordon the person, not Gordon the president,
yeah.
is, most of this is a result of state law passed in Florida. When I speak to campus stakeholders, they kind of, I don't want to say give the wink and the nod, but they're like, this is something we have to do. And at some point, the political winds will shift back. I know as all of the identity-based affiliate groups at UF have been, I don't want to say trying to keep things on the down low, because there is a fear that they could shut us down too. And that includes us, the Black Alumni Association, Hispanic, First Gen, military, all of them. So right now, we as affiliate groups have been kind of working together to support one another. And as long as we continue serving our communities without rocking the boat too much, I think we're going to be fine. The other note on that is all money that is donated to LGBTQ plus endowments at UF, including our affiliate group, must be spent on LGBTQ plus related issues. And that has been our pitch when we reach out to donors, when we reach out and host events and ask people to donate money, is your money is, yes, going to UF, but it is going for LGBTQ plus purposes. And they can't do anything about that. That is state law. That money donated to university funds must be spent based on the intent of the donor.
Gordon, I want to throw something out on a different topic. If there is anyone on here that is struggling or needs someone to talk to, please reach out to me. Gordon has my permission to share my contact info with anyone. I'm here for you. Just reach out to me, call me, email me, text me. Let me know what it's about. If you text me, because I'll look at a number that I don't know, and just mention the association or you attended this, so I know. Oh, okay. But call me, leave me a message, text me, email me. If you need help, you're struggling, or just need someone to listen to you, I'm here for you.
Yeah, I would copy that.
Yeah, same here.
Thanks for that, Kevin.
I
Yeah.
agree. Yes, as well.
And before we close off for the night, if our panelists would like to plug anything of theirs that they would like to promote, this is an opportunity to do so. Thank you so much for everything you've shared tonight. It's been wonderful and enlightening and inspiring. And as what I consider a member of the younger generation, though the undergrads might say I'm a little old at 26, hitting the grave practically. It's wonderful to hear, and I love learning from queer elders.
Nice. Well, I would love to plug our podcast. My wife and I have a podcast called LGBTQ History Alive by Ronnie and Kelly, and you can find us on any podcast platform. But we interview people who are heroes and sheroes and theros, and people who've led the way for all of us to be where we are right now. And as a final note, I would like to say, regardless of what's going on, find the joy in your life, because really there's a great deal for which to be joyful. Today, I believe we are more vulnerable than we've been in a long time. But also, I think we're stronger than we ever imagined as a community. And I want you to be loud and to be brave. And as Harvey Milk told us, hope must never be silent, nor shall we. And I wish everybody a happy coming out day tomorrow and a happy National LGBTQ History Month for October. So thank you.
I don't have
Thank you,
anything.
everybody, for coming.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
go ahead, Lee.
I don't have anything to plug. I don't usually look like this. I just finished a show here at the university, and so I'm a bit shaggy. But I do want to say this has been a joy to do. And we talk a lot about Florida, the state. But my time at UF I would not trade it for anything in the world. And so to talk with fellow Gators and just the experience of going and being in Gainesville, as beautiful and flawed as it is, it's still Gainesville, and the experience of being at UF really changed my life. And again, as I said earlier, not only as a gay man, but as an actor and my profession. And so I have such love for UF. So this has been a pleasure to share with all of you. So thank you.
Nice.
Yeah, I would also like to thank you for putting this together, Ariel and Gordon and the rest of the group. It's, you know, being in California, you feel kind of lost amongst the Bruins and the Trojans, but some of us do run around with our Gator gear on Saturdays and promote the, you know, what's happening. And I watch the Swamp when it's on here. But this was fabulous. I have to say, I loved every minute that I spent at the University of Florida. I've always been proudly, you know, a Gator, and am very quick to tell people that that is my alumni school. And, you know, my partner, God bless her, she puts up with my nonsense with all the Gator games. And I keep telling her, I'm taking you to the Swamp one day. You better be ready and wear earplugs because you've had nothing like it before you go. But, you know, I also agree, yes, for those that are here and in the group and listening, you know, find your tribe, find your people. This is a temporary time for us. We have to remember that. This is temporary. We will win this. And, you know, we've done it before, and it's, you know, put your shoes on and here we go, and cast your ballot whenever they're coming, because that is very, very important. And know your local school board.
Cool.
Yeah, and thank you. I feel honored to be asked to participate on this panel, and thank you for the good work that you're doing for all of us.
All right.
With
Well,
that,
thank you again for Vero. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say that closes our night. But Gordon, you can wrap us up.
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you again, and everybody, thank you for coming. I also want to give a shout out to Ariel for moderating the panel tonight. Your questions were great. Thank you so much. And everybody, enjoy the rest of your evening and have a safe weekend. Jordan, go ahead.